Hey everybody, welcome to Season 3 of Song Revolution. Get ready to ramp up your songwriting. Hey everybody, welcome back to Song Revolution. You're the reason that we do this show. We've been doing it since 2017. If you haven't gone back and checked out all the great shows in the archive, jump over to NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com, look for the podcast, and just browse through. There's over 200 episodes. Some of my favorites are Kim Walker-Smith, Matt Maher, and Bear Reinhardt from Need to Breathe. So check those out and subscribe to the show. Just love it, share it to your friends, and help us to share the love. And also, if you haven't jumped into our NCS 2025 Songwriting Challenge, check the show notes to this show. You can download a 31-page PDF guiding you through a whole year of adding information, inspiration, and skills to your songwriting. I love doing this show because I get to bring you great people, great human beings that I believe will bring value and incredible inspiration to your life. Today's show is no different. I have a dear friend of mine. She is an executive coach, she's a therapist, and she is an EMDR specialist. And we're going to be unpacking how you can tap into those things to release greater creativity. People talk about writer's block. I don't even believe in writer's block, and I'll share with you why as we get into our show. But I want to welcome to Song Revolution my dear friend Mandy Morris.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here doing this with you, John.
Yeah, it's just thrilled to have you. So you're here visiting Nashville for a few days, so I thought it would be great to just grab you, have you come to the studio and do a show. And I thought it'd be fun if we talked a little bit about how what you do can help release creativity in really anyone involved in anything. Maybe we don't want creative accounting necessarily, but songwriting, painting, dancing, the arts, music. So maybe share a little bit. Did I describe who you are? You're an executive coach, a therapist, and an EMDR specialist. You even teach that, and I want to get into that in just a little bit. But tell us a little bit about you and what you really do any given day.
Yeah, so whether it's therapy or doing the executive psychology coaching, big part of what I do is helping bring what's subconscious conscious. Because around 95% of our brain is subconscious long-term memory. And if you're walking around unaware of how you've been programmed, you've been wired, what the effects of your childhood has done to you in positive ways, negative ways, whatever it may be, then there's just a lot running the show that people may not realize that is. And so if I have a leader or executive come to me because they need improvement in getting to the next level in their business, or maybe they need to learn how to lead better, or maybe it's my therapy practice and I have a client who's coming because they have a lot of anxiety or depression, or they're having relationship issues, all of it is going to go back to something subconscious, some sort of belief of self that's been rooted in their brain that they don't even realize is running the show. And so if I can kind of excavate what's underneath and make what's subconscious conscious, then we can work through it. We can build new neural pathways. We can create new ways of operating so that you're not staying stuck in the same patterns over and over.
That's so fascinating. Now, I want to go just a slightly different direction because I know that you grew up in the church. You have a very musical background, a musical family. I know that the part of the church that I grew up in really poo-pooed therapy and anything, that wasn't the spirit. And we would call maybe emotional problems were spiritual warfare, and it was the devil attacking us. And, not to come against anybody that, might still believe that, but as you have moved into your practice you've had for over a decade, you've been doing this a while, and from your spiritual background, what would you say to that if someone just, not to go too deep into that, but I think that's a pretty important thing for Christian people who might feel embarrassed about dealing with mental health, or do you know what I mean? Does that
for
clear
sure,
enough of a question?
Well, maybe I'll answer it with a a parable. So there is a flood coming, and this man was crying to God, like, save me, there's a flood coming. And as the water's starting to rise, cars are barely able to drive, but still drivable. Someone drives up in the car and says, hey man, jump in. He was like, no, God's got me. So then the flood starts to get a little higher, and now he's like up on the roof, like window area, and a boat comes by, says, man, jump in. He's like, no, God's got me. And then he's all the way at the top of the house, and a helicopter puts the ladder down, says, come on, get in. And the guy drowns. He gets to heaven, and he's like, God, where were you? He goes, I sent you a car, I sent you a boat, I sent you a helicopter. Yeah, all of those things. And I think we're all uniquely wired with certain gifts, and we've been created to serve certain purposes and bringing God's love to everybody and helping humanity. And, this is my purpose. So while a lot of times there can be those messages from the church that you should be able to pray it away.
Right.
And I think there's good intentions behind it. However, it creates more problems than it does good. And it creates a level of shame that I don't believe the church should do to people.
I think that's a beautiful answer. We were at an awards show this past week, my staff and I, and we were blessed with all the great music, but there's an artist named Josh Wilson, and he must have gone through some really tough emotional and mental things, because he's written a song, and it was I Need Help. And it was basically the bridge was like, tell somebody. Don't just tell Jesus, tell somebody. It was really beautifully done, well done. And I think there's more openness in the church these days for getting the kind of help you need, and not blaming all of your problems on Satan.
Right,
but, and maybe some of our problems are, but, but I love that. Talk for just a moment about the difference between the conscious and subconscious, because you said so much of it is driven subconsciously. I know that sometimes that's been confusing to me and other people. I think you said something about deep memories or deep things that have been just shoved so deep you don't even know they're there. How would you describe those two things?
So from the first 18 months of our life is when our brain is growing the most. And 0 to 9, 8, 9, 10, this is the foundation for how our brain gets hardwired. And so all the neural pathways, all the things you learn about emotions, all the things that you learn about how to cope with feelings, the things you start to believe about, is the world safe, is it not safe, are my caregivers safe people, are they not safe people, can I say certain things or do, you're getting conditioned, and that conditioning lays neural pathways in the mind. And so the automatic thoughts you have without even thinking about it, that's hardwiring. And so as we move through our childhood, what a lot of people will find is that they're staying stuck in some sort of pattern that's just so frustrating, whether it's addiction or the same bad relationship, or why am I still at the same income? I've been trying to grow my business for the last 10 years and I keep getting stuck, or it's the not being able to move to that next level, or maybe for some of the artists or the musicians, they feel frustrated because they're stuck in that same spot over and over. And what happens is we operate off of what we know and what's familiar. And a lot of times the way we made it through our childhood and we survived certain things that helped us for a time, but now it's not serving us anymore in our adult life, and especially in relationships. But people don't know how to break that. And so when we can dip our toes back in the past, not to stay stuck in it, and really, especially with the EMDR work, we don't really have to talk much about it if we don't want to. But there's certain beliefs that we have about ourselves, which creates the behaviors and the thoughts and the reactions that we have or that we don't have, or whatever it may be. And so all these automatic things that we do and how we think, how we talk, how we react, how we relate to people, that foundation of that was laid early in childhood. And so we have to learn, how are you operating? Why and how do we rewire the brain? Because we know now, and it's, we've known this for a while, but our brain has neuroplasticity, meaning it's kind of malleable, that you can form new thought patterns, and those new thought patterns can form new neural pathways. So what used to be automatic, now the healthier version, that can become automatic over time.
Right. So it's like the coping mechanisms of our childhood become the addictions and the dysfunctional behaviors that we don't even know why necessarily.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, and I think we all have some of that, but probably, we've learned to work around them, or maybe we're just still struggling deep within them. I love the idea of the executive psychological coaching, because as an executive running my company for the last 10 years, I face some of those issues, I'm sure, the imposter syndrome, the sense of just being unworthy, and if the world finds out, that I'm not as good as I, think I am or portray myself to be, that is so debilitating on a day-to-day basis and can affect the bottom line, really.
For sure.
Right?
For sure, yeah. Well, and one of the examples I'll share about myself is, when I was maybe third grade, there's this interaction that happened with a girl in the playground. We had just moved to Baltimore to Georgia when I was little, and I was misprescribed these big red glasses. I had big hair out to here. I hadn't had braces yet, and if you were to see pictures of me from then till now, it's not even recognizable. And I was very aware, I was very conscious or self-conscious of my appearance. And I was picking up on the fact that I was getting left out a lot on the playground. And I asked my one friend, hey, how come you hang out with her more than me? Because I was getting left out a lot. And without missing a beat, she looked at me and she said, well, because she's prettier than you. And they walked off. I was sobbing on the playground. And that's a little thing, right? That's not this huge trauma. But it was one of the things that made me feel like there was something wrong with me. And so from there, once your mind forms a belief about yourself, you don't realize you're doing it, then our mind can't hold two conflicting beliefs. I can't believe that I'm enough and I'm not enough. And so now my mind's finding evidence for all the reasons why I'm not enough. And so as an adult looking back on this, having done a lot of the work, I can see how any real or perceived social negative interaction I attributed to be something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I don't matter. So then what happens? Social anxiety, people-pleasing, lack of boundaries, laying myself in a narcissistic marriage that could have destroyed me, and not being able to stand up for myself or have a voice playing it small, not taking risks in business, things like that. And it's all these things over time that accumulate that your mind is confirming why that belief is true. When in reality, I mean, I think we can all think, if you had a 10-year-old girl and that happened to her, you'd be like, well, no, they're the problem, not you. But there was no one at the time for me to really process and work through that with. And that's one small example. I mean, people grow up in homes with abuse, or maybe it's not abuse. Maybe they just weren't allowed to express their feelings about things, or they were made to feel like they weren't important or didn't matter. I can't tell you how many of the high achievers I work with who their stuck place, whatever that is, most likely goes back to this feeling of I'm a failure, a feeling of I don't matter, I'm not good enough, or other things, but those are some main ones.
Right. That's really insightful. I think that the things that we believe unconsciously about ourselves are often, if not always, the things that are holding us back. They don't even have to be conscious stories, which I know we do tell ourselves stupid things all the time. At least I do. And so, but to think of those things that are buried down there holding us back and thinking that there could be some answers for that is really kind of hopeful. I talk over these years, I have talked about writer's block, and I think it's a really unfortunate thing. It's like calling every soft drink Coke, right? It's just or every copy machine a Xerox. It's just like writer's block is just that big catch-all umbrella for anything that keeps us as songwriters from being creative in writing. I like stress or anxiety or relationship problems or maybe any number of these unconscious things. Let me set this up with one more statement. I really believe that a lot of what's keeping songwriters back is that they've just not got the skills.
Right.
They've never really developed the craft of songwriting. That's what I deal with, 90% of my day. And they want to, they feel passionate about it. They know God's touched their lives and this is what they want to do. They have some musicality in their lives. But they never really learned even the rudiments sometimes. And I wonder, there are probably two scenarios. The person who's never learned, who maybe isn't letting themselves learn, or maybe they're caught in some other negative thinking about it, or maybe the person who has learned, but they get blocked and they get shut down. What would you say would be some of the benefits of what you do, maybe with your coaching or therapy or EMDR? They're kind of all together probably, but what do you think might be some helpful things that you could bring or even in theory could bring to someone who might be struggling and feel like they're just shut down?
Yeah, for sure. So off the bat, this idea of writer's block has a negative connotation to it. It's like, oh, I have writer's block, like I have this disease. And this negative connotation, so you've already assigned meaning to this natural thing that happens. To your point, it could be that you haven't learned enough yet, and so you're at a spot where you need more data, you need more information or skills to get to that next point.
Right.
Or there's something going on in your mind, what thoughts, feelings that aren't helping you. And without realizing it, you've begun to believe something about yourself that isn't true. And this is where a lot of the imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon comes in to place when people get writer's block. Because now because they're assigning that this is a negative thing, therefore there must be something wrong with me. And I would really encourage people to not assign meaning to being stuck. It's just data. It's just
that's so good.
And be curious about it. We don't have to create these labels for things. And it's normal. Our mind's trying to make sense of everything that we do, and so our mind is,
that's
things,
so good, Mandy. Yeah.
And then the next step is, what does it make you feel? How does it make you feel about yourself that you're having this experience? What does it feel like it means about you that you're having this experience? When I've worked with musicians, artists, creatives on this topic, a lot of times it goes back to, it makes me feel like I'm failing. It makes me feel like I'm not really good at what I do. Something along those lines. And then I'll ask, well, what's the earliest time in your life you ever felt that way? Typically, it's going to go back pretty far. So what's happening is, because you're now assigning meaning to it, your mind is like, oh, what beliefs about myself do I have back here that I need to confirm is true? Just like I did in the playground when I was in third grade.
Subconscious.
Totally subconscious.
You're not doing that on purpose.
Yeah, not doing it on purpose. You don't have any control over it. But it's just this feeling that comes up. It's like this experience that you're having of writer's block is touching a wound that hasn't been healed. So if you haven't gone through and done some work on being free from these limiting beliefs that you have about you, then anytime your mind associates something to that belief, it's like putting your finger in a wound and it's super sensitive. However, if you've done the work and you've healed it, and now maybe there's no scab anymore, there's just an old scar, it's calloused over. If that's something that typically would have made made that reaction or activation happen, doesn't happen anymore because it's in the past. So all of that to say is be curious first. Let's take a non-judgmental approach to the experience. Don't assign meaning to it, but if you find that you are, take a step back because you're probably believing something about yourself that isn't true. Even if it's just, I shouldn't be having this, when in reality, it's normal. But you're assigning meaning to it, and that's the problem.
Right. And that just makes it worse and worse.
It does.
Oh, I've got writer's block. I've got writer's block. I've got writer's block. And it gets worse and worse and worse because of that's a reinforcing belief.
Yeah. It's the same thing in sports. I did martial arts for a long time, and to be able to get the black belt, you have to be able to do a flip out of a hold, whatnot. And I started learning how to do it, and then I landed on my neck wrong. And after that, my body was like, nope. And I had a mental block. I had a belief that I'm not safe. That's what I had. And so when you can work through the belief and let your body have a different experience with whatever you're experiencing, then because your mind and your body is always trying to protect you. But when you can move through that, then you don't have the block anymore.
That is so good. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and maybe do an EMDR session and just see how that goes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm talking to Mandy Morris, great friend, executive psychological coach, therapist, and EMDR specialist. I just love what we've been able to share so far. So we're going to take a quick break for a little commercial, and we'll be right back. What would it feel like to have 52 weeks of access to the right people in Nashville? People who've been making music for decades. People who can answer every question that you have about what pro-level music making is all about. Well, you can get that and more by joining NCS Community. Our community is a group of worldwide dedicated Christian songwriters who want what you want, to glorify God with your gifts and to get your music out there. I hope that you'll consider joining NCS Community today. All right, I'm back with my friend Mandy Morris, and she is an EMDR specialist, among other things. And would you take just a minute to talk about what EMDR is? And if we're brave enough, we could try just like do a little demonstration of what EMDR is.
Yeah, absolutely. So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So super long name, EMDR for short. And essentially, when we go through trauma, or that word gets overused a lot, it's kind of become a buzzword, but any experience that overrides our nervous system's ability to cope. And we find ourselves stuck in the same thoughts, patterns, whatever. There's usually that stuck area, there's something trapped in your nervous system. It's trapped in a part of the brain that hasn't been fully processed, therefore it hasn't been able to be filed in the correct folder. If you think about your brain like a computer system, and we go through life, we have an experience that then all of a sudden creates this virus, if you will. Well, it's not going to run efficiently in the way it needs to unless that virus is taken out, and oftentimes it comes from memories from long ago or a negative belief about self. And what they have found that when we incorporate bilateral stimulation, or BLS, all that means is left and right side of the body. And we do that through tapping, we do that through audio, through visual methods, that it makes the left hemisphere of the brain and the right hemisphere of the brain start to talk to each other and form new neural pathways needed to take care of what's stuck in the nervous system and file it away correctly so that you don't have these triggered responses, this overactivation in the nervous system that keeps you stuck.
Wow. Okay, that was a lot, but I'm sure people can go online, Google it a little bit, and find some resources. Go to your website. We'll give that information as well. All right. Well, are you game for maybe trying a little demonstration with me? And I've been thinking about this because we were talking about it. Is the topic of I'm not good enough? Can we work with that at all?
Sure.
Is that too broad or too weird?
We can. I would say think of something that's mildly to mediumly bothering you, some sort of stressor, where if 0 means you feel completely calm and neutral when you're thinking about it, and 10 is the most distressing possible, maybe something around a 5 or a 6. And you can share what it is, or you don't have to share what it is, but you just need to have it in your mind.
Okay. Well, I think I'm a lot like everybody else, and there's a fear of failure in there, and a kind of related to the fear of not being good enough. Is that something we can start with?
We can.
Of failure? Okay.
Is there an experience that triggers that you can think of in your mind? And you don't have to say it out loud, but you can.
A daily experience or something in the past?
Something in the recent past. Maybe the last month or two, where it's like, that same old feeling came up.
Yes.
Okay. So I would want you to hold that in your mind. And can you think of what your body feels like when you have that experience? Can you think of any sounds or smells or sensations that are included in whatever that triggered event was that you recently had?
That's a little harder, but...
Whether it's someone said something or it was just you were in a room and maybe you remember the smell of the room.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go with that.
Okay. And scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is the most distressing possible, 0, calm, neutral. When you think of that triggering event, how stressful does it feel?
Let's go with a 5.
With a 5. Okay. And where do you feel that in your body?
Right in my gut.
Okay.
Just like right there.
So when I tell you to begin, and we could do this lots of ways, but for the sake of the podcast, I'm going to have you tap like this. So you're going to go about this speed if you want to practice with me.
Okay.
Okay? And then when I tell you to stop, you'll stop, take a breath, and then I'll ask you where you're at on the number.
Okay.
Okay? All right. So if you could hold that same triggering event in your mind and begin tapping.
Do I need to close my eyes?
You can. And take a deep breath. Let it go. And what do you notice in your body right now?
I notice kind of a tingling nervousness in my gut.
In your gut? Okay. Go with that and begin tapping. And take a deep breath. Let it go. And when you think of that event on a scale of 0 to 10, how distressing does it feel?
It jumped up a little bit to a 7.
Okay. Well, just notice that. Some of it's probably the pressure too, all of that. I want you to notice that feeling. And if you could talk to the feeling, what it would say, and begin tapping. And take a breath. And what do you notice now?
That I tend to make it worse.
Okay. And notice that. Keep having that conversation in your mind. Begin tapping. And deep breath. Let it go. On a scale of 0 to 10, how distressing does it feel?
It's lowering.
Okay.
Like 3.
Like a 3? Where do you feel that little bit of 3 left in your body?
I'm still kind of in the same place.
Okay. Just notice that, tend to that, and begin tapping. And what do you notice now?
I just realized that I'm the one who just keeps making it worse and worse and worse. So like, it's not even real.
Yeah.
It's just something
Right.
I'm
Right.
imagining.
Yeah. So when you think of that triggering event that you were originally thinking of, scale 0 to 10, how distressing does it feel?
Yeah, it's 0
Yeah.
now. It's
Yeah.
like,
Why was it even bothering
Why was
you?
it even bothering me? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I know that was basically a pretty short
Yeah.
version, and I probably interrupted it there at the end.
No, that's good.
But this is just so fascinating to think that working on things that have really held me back, kept me stuck for all these years, could be released like that. And
I think the thing with it too that I want people to understand is all different types of therapy, and this one is not a cognitive-based therapy. It's a body-based therapy. It's a neurological therapy, which is why it works a lot more effectively.
yeah, it's like it bypasses your thinking. That's what you're saying, right? It bypasses your ability to reason it out, right?
Because it's so deeply ingrained on a different level of the brain.
Yeah. Wow, it's so fascinating. And I work with a lot of creatives. I work with songwriters, and again, I just want to say again, I mean, I think that a lot of times they're just not skilled yet, and so they're blocked. They call it being blocked, but they just don't know how to proceed, and that's the data that they need, right? They need to add those songwriting skills, and that's why we do what we do. But I think there are times that I know for me that I'm stressed about work, I'm stressed about money, I'm stressed about relationships, I'm stressed about just life, everything that's on the news, and I go to this distressed place. Would you recommend tapping even without?
Yeah.
How would you encourage our listeners to maybe overcome that on their own, even without going all the way through EMDR?
Yeah, so literally just bilateral stimulation in and of itself makes the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, come online. So if you want to calm down, do something bilateral. We already do this, walking it off. There's neuroscience behind walking it off. It makes the left and right side of your body come online.
Right.
Parents who sway with the baby back and forth, it's a natural back and forth rhythm. So tapping, going a walk, there's binaural beats. There is the new app that my brother and I are doing called
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
So the app is in the beta version of it, and so people who want to be a part of us making it better before we fully release it are welcome to. It's called So Free, and it's a stress detection app that resets your nervous system using bilateral stimulation in under 2 minutes.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And we can put that link in the show notes today. That is just so fascinating. We wish you the best with that, and just the hope of overcoming some of these blocks and not only in our songwriting, but even in our emotional lives in general.
I truly believe people don't have to live with this sort of suffering, even if it's just this background noise of, well, I guess it's just how I am. It doesn't have to be that way.
Right. There is hope. Mandy, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you guys, I hope this has been enlightening today, encouraging. Go to the show notes, find the links we're going to put in there to reach Mandy. You may even want to hire her as your EMDR therapist and coach, but go ahead and check out who she is, what she does, and how it can benefit you in your songwriting. Another great show for Song Revolution. Tune in next week. Check out the NCS 2025 Songwriting Challenge Guide in the show notes. Check out the website and just let us know how we can serve you. We are here to empower you. All right, have a good week. Thanks for joining us on today's show. If you got some value, please help us share the love. Leave a like and a share and a good review. Be sure to check out everything that we have to offer you at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. We'll see you next time.